Hey MCARBO Brotherhood, I'm Chris Nelson, President of MCARBO. I'm really excited to introduce the Marlin 917-925 trigger spring kit for your Marlin bolt action rifles. Now we'll be doing the installation on this Marlin 925 here. This spring kit works for a wide variety of Marlin bolt action rifles, specifically with the T900 trigger assembly. We'll go into that in further detail on the tabletop here in a second. One thing I wanted to point out, there are a lot of threads out on the internet talking about ballpoint pin springs being used as a trigger return spring in your bolt action rifles, specifically the T900. Guys, you want to save a couple bucks, you do it on ammo, you do it on gun oil, you do it on something like that, anything that's a commodity. You don't do it on internal parts for your firearm. That spring in that ballpoint pin was designed to eventually be thrown away with the pin, not to be used inside the firearm. Our springs are designed for a lifetime, to give you that performance and reliability for a lifetime, backed by our 100% no hassle lifetime guarantee. You're gonna get that consistent, smooth trigger pull every time. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. I highly recommend you take a look at the spring kit that we've got for your Marlin T900 trigger assembly. We'll jump into the tabletop now, talk about which models and variations will work for this spring kit. By the way, with this spring kit, we got nearly a 40% trigger pull reduction on this Marlin 925. A fantastic upgrade, guys. Really excited to introduce the Marlin 917-925 trigger spring kit for your Marlin rifles. Let's jump on over the tabletop now, put this baby in. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and make sure our firearms are clear. Remove the magazine, check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine well. This firearm's clear. Now, in any rimfire firearm, it's highly recommended that you use a snap cap or dummy round to actually save your firing pin. That way there, it'll actually put a little bit of a buffer in between that steel firing pin and that steel chamber. Otherwise, your firing pin will be striking steel on steel and eventually degrading it and wearing it out. So to simulate us having an actual round in there, we'll use a dummy round before we do any trigger pull testing. Parts and tools needed for this build: the Marlin 917-925 trigger spring kit by MCARBO. Keep in mind this is compatible with a wide variety of Marlin bolt action rifles, especially the T900 trigger assembly. They were used in a ton of different variations of Marlin rifles, from the Marlin 25 to the Marlin 915 to the Marlin 980 to the 981, 982, 983, the Marlin 17, the Marlin 880, 882, and 883. You're also going to need a flathead screwdriver, and as always, guys, make sure you're wearing iPro. See what kind of factory trigger pull we're working with. 4 pounds, 1.6 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 4 pounds, 4 ounces. First, we begin by removing the bolt. Make sure it's on fire. Go ahead and open the bolt, pull the trigger all the way, and slide the bolt right out. Now we'll turn our rifle upright. We need to remove this front and rear takedown screw. Start with the front. Just remember, the front takedown screw is a shorter, fatter one. Set that aside. Now the rear takedown screw here. The rear takedown screw, the long and skinny one. Set those aside. Now we'll leave the trigger guard and the magazine plate intact on the stock. Go ahead and pull up on the stock. You may have to move that magazine latch forward just a tad. Set them aside. Now I also want to point out this takedown screw stud. It actually just slides into the notch on the barrel here like so. We'll just go ahead and we'll remove it for now. Now let's focus on the trigger assembly. Now before we go any further, let's go ahead and take a good up close view of the trigger assembly. You can see here, this is your safety selector. Safe, fire. You can see how that interacts with the rest of the components. It's always good to analyze everything closely before we start taking it apart. Now we're going to be removing this lower pin here and actually pulling the trigger off. But this is your sear spring here down below, and this is your sear. Now this is your trigger return spring, this thicker one inside that we will be replacing. So just wanted to point all that out. Now let's go ahead and start the disassembly by removing that lower E-clip here and pressing out that bottom pin, which is going to release the trigger and that trigger return spring all simultaneously. Now take your flathead screwdriver, go ahead and press on that E-clip. Be careful not to lose it. Set the E-clip aside. Now we'll go ahead and we'll press out that pin, and just be careful not to lose your factory spring just in case you want to hold on to it. Slides right out. You might have to manipulate that trigger a little bit. There you go. Set that pin aside. Now we'll slowly remove that trigger. You can see how it all interlocks and engages. And there's that trigger return spring right there, just resting on the sear. Go ahead and set that aside and let's grab our MCARBO trigger return spring. Let's go ahead and open up our MCARBO Marlin 917-925 trigger spring kit. Now there's the MCARBO spring. You can see how springy that is. Let's go ahead and compare it with the factory spring. The MCARBO spring's on the right here. You can see how springy that is, the silver one. And the factory spring's over here on the left. So you can see which spring is definitely lighter. So let's go ahead and put in the MCARBO spring now. Now just before we go any further, I know we're trying to get as light a trigger pull as possible. So just go ahead and clean off this little tip here on the trigger. This is where the trigger engages. You can see this little bit of wear here. This is where the trigger engages with the actual sear inside the trigger assembly. So we want to clean up those two spots real fast, and this is a great opportunity while you've got your rifle in pieces here to do some deep cleaning. Alright, so we cleaned it a little bit. Now the secret ingredient here, I want to get a little bit extra trigger pull reduction, so I'm going to put some synthetic grease with PTFE in there. Now that PTFE is Teflon, so it's nice and slippery, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a little bit of an extra slippery layer there on the actual sear and trigger engagement surface, just helping us get a little extra something. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on the tip of this trigger as well while I'm at it. And it actually even recommends in your owner's manual to do this. So this isn't a big stretch. It's a safe thing to do. Alright, so grab our MCARBO trigger return spring. We're going to drop that right in like so. You can see it just resting right there on the sear. Now we want to take our trigger and insert that into the trigger assembly, but we want to capture the MCARBO spring while we're doing that. So we insert the trigger, capture the MCARBO spring with this little tab here. Right, move it forward, and then move that safety selector lever out of the way so we can get that hole in perfect view. And then we're going to drop our pin right in there. And it helps just to move that trigger a little bit as you're pushing that pin through. There we go. There, all the way through. Now we'll take our E-clip and insert that on the other side. Helps just lay it flat on there, then take your flathead, drive it home. There we go. Nice. So we'll go ahead and just check the operation real quick. Alright. If you got a little excess of that grease there, you can go ahead and clean that up while you're at it. There we go. Let's go ahead and put this baby in. Don't forget, before we reinstall the stock, we want to take our takedown screw stud and insert that into the little cutout on the barrel there like so. Then we'll grab our stock and drop that right over the barrel and receiver assembly. Hold it all in place. You may have to move that magazine latch forward. Take your short takedown screw, that goes in front. Get it started by hand. Then your long and skinny rear takedown screw in the back. Go ahead and get that started and tighten them down. Alright, now let's go ahead and insert the bolt. You can see this little tab on the side here that we have to line up with the receiver. So go ahead and grab your rifle, insert that, line it up. Now you're going to have to pull the trigger all the way forward so that the bolt can get past that sear. There we go. Now that we've got our rifles back together, let's go ahead and do a quick function check. Take a snap cap dummy round. We'll go ahead and insert that. Just save our firing pin. Place weapon on safe. Pull the trigger. Nothing. Good. Place it on fire. Pull the trigger. Nice. All right, let's go ahead and measure that trigger pull. Now let's see what kind of modified trigger pull we got. Snap cap still installed. 2 pounds, 9.4 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 2 pounds, 8.1 ounces. Well, there you have it, guys. From 4 pounds down to 2.5 pounds. That's a fantastic trigger pull improvement on our Marlin 925. Really exciting, a great kit for the price. You can't beat it, the performance and the reliability, the lifetime reliability. Guys, get a good spring for your firearm that was designed for your firearm. Please don't use the ballpoint pen spring. Nothing worse than that. But guys, really excited about this kit. Just a fantastic improvement for your Marlin bolt action rifle. Really excited to see your feedback. Let us know what kind of trigger pull reduction you got in your Marlin bolt action. Thank you, MCARBO brother, for your support. And as always, happy shooting.